Okay, so I'm doing this at halftime. Kevin Durant's got 15 points. Kyrie has 16, 17, whatever it may be. Mainly want to focus on Kevin Durant. He looked good. He did not look like a guy who missed, a year and a half because of an Achilles injury. And you could see it on his first basket where he attacked a closeout and just finished with a two-handed dunk. He had somebody trying to block his shot, but they weren't able to get over there fast enough. And he seemed really quick off the dribble. There was no hesitancy at all. There was no fear when it came to landing or anything for KD. And he just had that sort of second nature fluidity to his game where he doesn't really have to think about anything. He just does whatever he wants to do because he's better than everybody else. He was moving in transition really well. He had another play where Kyrie got it to him off of a made basket really quick. And again, KD's burst off the dribble, just that initial first step, which to me seemed like the most crucial thing about him coming back from the Achilles. And it seemed to be no problem at all. He did have a contested mid-range over Rui, which is just signature KD. He had, 6 free throw attempts, so he was already getting fouled. He was mixing it up down low a few times, and I just remember Gordon Hayward, and part of it with Hayward was he had a second surgery not long before the season began, but also he was a little hesitant just operating around the basket. And you just feared that KD would have had a similar thing, but not the case at all, really. We knew the shooting was going to be great, even if he wasn't the same guy coming back, but it seems like he's still going to have this. Now, there's still questions about over the season, if he can handle just the workload and if his Achilles and lower body and all that can deal with that. Because we do remember he's also had a foot injury, which I think was about 5 years ago at this point, and you fear that with a guy of his height, you start having a few of those and you have a tougher time handling long seasons and all that, and we'll have to see there. But based on this first game, he did look pretty good. Now, I'd also want to point out KD defensively. He did fall asleep on one pick and roll play where Denny looked good. Side note, Denny had a really good first half, I felt like. And he also had another play, Durant, where he was out-muscled by Rui on the offensive boards, so for what that's all worth. We can also learn some other things about the Nets based on the time we saw. For one, the starting lineup, it was KD, Kyrie, DeAndre Jordan, Joe Harris, and Spencer Dinwiddie. That does make a bit of sense. That way you get a third ball handler around KD and Kyrie. It also allows KD and Kyrie to operate off the ball a little bit more since Dinwiddie can, facilitate a bit. Joe Harris is a floor spacer. That's great. And then the DeAndre Jordan, Jared Allen center thing. It's not going to be the most important thing with the Nets all year, but it will be a subplot. And based on this game, I think we see where Steve Nash is leaning right now. As far as Steve Nash's offense in general, there were definitely your KD and Kyrie ISOs and pick and rolls, which is fine. But there was also moments where the offense didn't have anything, and then players would instinctively run to set a screen on the ball real quick, or there was some handoff action. It did seem like there was this sort of established thing of okay, if the offense slows down, we start doing this. So that's cool. Perhaps we could see Steve Nash try to implement a sort of freelance offense where there's not going to be specific plays called, but they have these basic principles that they go to when things start to slow down, which is cool because you don't see that from every head coach. How many times do we say to ourselves, well, what the hell is their offense if the initial action doesn't work? And based on the first half of this game, maybe Steve Nash has got something up his sleeve there. Now, I don't know if we saw a whole lot of Kyrie and KD playing off of each other like that. Maybe there was a KD screen for Kyrie, but just in the stretch that I saw, it seemed like it was a bit of your turn, my turn, except for a couple of transition plays, which isn't the worst thing. If you have those two doing their normal thing and the other one is spacing the floor out and there's only one big guy who could potentially get in the way, and even then it's DeAndre Jordan who can catch alley-oops and stuff, then you can have a lot of success with that. Another thing I took note of was how deep into the first quarter KD and Kyrie played. I thought for a moment they were going to play the entire first quarter. I believe they both sat with about 10 minutes gone, so 2 minutes left until the second. And, I mean, there was no Karis LeVert, so the rotation's going to be affected a little bit there. But I would imagine if that's a preview that suggests that Steve Nash is going to sit KD and Kyrie at the same time and play them both together, then I think it would also imply that Karis and Dinwiddie will play together. Because I feel like that would be the best way to offset KD and Kyrie sitting, is to have your next two offensive guys out there. And I feel like with the Joe Harris and Landry Shamet minutes, and they both can space out, of course, and Taurean Prince, or we'll see with him. He might be an awkward type of fit here. He could be a guy willing to spot up, and we'll see how good of a shooter he can be. But the point being is, I feel like they've got enough guys to make it work with whatever lineup they want to go with, whether they want to stagger KD and Kyrie's minutes or just have them basically glued together in the rotation. Now, to think about Kyrie a little bit, just because it's mainly been about KD and the team, I mean, I've said this enough times. I'm fearful that Kyrie can get through a whole season at this point. The guy missed basically all of last season. He's missed 2 different playoff runs because of injuries and stuff. But even when I think about this team and I think, all right, so let's say KD is back to being KD, and based on what we've seen here, that's what we have to go off of. Then you think, all right, well, KD, Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie. Granted, there's also health questions with Karis LeVert, but those two, Shamet and Joe Harris for floor spacing, Jared Allen, DeAndre Jordan as your center rotation. This team also has all of their picks moving forward, so they can make a trade. Their most tradable contract is Taurean Prince, who I do think could be a decent asset for a different team. Maybe Jared Allen is in there as well to get you to about 16, 17 million. They got a bunch of smaller contracts as well. The point being is they probably still have one move to make, unless this roster just really, really clicks. And the point that I'm getting at is, if you've got Kevin Durant and this roster, which has enough spacing, and Dinwiddie and LeVert, and let's say Kyrie is hurt and for whatever reason, shoulder, knee, whatever. If KD is back to really being himself, then I think he can lead that team to the finals even without Kyrie. Especially, again, when I think this team is in a good position to make a move. Although we're going to have to see how good they are defensively. So then you just think, well, if they do have Kyrie for the playoffs, then, well, yeah. So, I mean, that's been my thing with this team the whole time. I haven't done a standings prediction yet, but I'm probably going to pick the Bucks for the 1 seed if I end up doing the video. After that, I really don't know. But regardless of what seed I would put the Nets in, if KD and Kyrie are healthy, then they might be the best pick for the finals. I mean, 100% Kevin Durant is the best player in the Eastern Conference, I would say. I would still put him above Giannis. And Kyrie has already proven that you can win a title with him if he's your second best player. So, yeah. Again, there's a long season to go, and we'll have to see what the health of these two, if they can get through the season, and if they're both good to go in the playoffs. But as far as this one game, yeah, feeling optimistic.